City University Television presents the American Theater Wing Seminars. Working in the theater. This seminar, performance.
Welcome to the American Theater Wing's Working in the Theater Seminars, which come to you from the Graduate Center at the City University of New York. As founders of the American Theater Wing's Antoinette Perry Tony Award and president of the Wing, I'm so happy to be able to bring you these seminars. They offer the rare opportunity to hear performers, producers, playwrights, directors, designers, and a host of theater professionals discuss the realities of working in the theater. Since introduced in 1973, more than 900 of Broadway's and off-Broadway's best have participated. But we are more than the Tony Awards, which are proudly given for distinguished achievement in the theater. We are a year-round organization dedicated to serving the theater and the community. We are a source that helps develop new audiences. We initiated Introduction to Broadway in 1991, and since then have enabled nearly 70,000 New York City high school students to attend a Broadway show, many for the first time. We continue to reach out with our newest program, Theater in Schools, through which professionals like those you will meet here today volunteer to go into classrooms to discuss working in the theater with students. This in-classroom series targets every facet of the business of theater, from playwrights and directors to poster artists and press agents. Not only do we want these young people to become theatergoers, but we want them to know the wide range of other job opportunities that exist in our business. We are a means of bringing the magic of theater to thousands who cannot get to the theater itself. The Wing's hospital program, which dates back to World War II and the Stage Door Canteen, continues today with performers from Broadway, off-Broadway, and the cabaret world doing almost 100 shows each year in nursing homes, veterans hospitals, children's wards, and AIDS centers in the New York area. We are proud to be of service, happy to have this wonderful working relation with the theatrical community, and we are grateful to everyone who makes what the American Theater Wing does possible. We hope that you will enjoy and learn from the performers you will be seeing today. And so let me quickly introduce our panel. Chuck Cooper from The Life, Robert Cuccioli from Jekyll Hyde, Pat Hingle from 1776, Pamela Isaacs from The Life, McCarthy from Sideshow, J. Smith Cameron from As Bees and Honey Drown. And of course our loyal and distinguished moderators are Brendan Gill, author, critic in residence at the New Yorker Magazine, and on the board of the American Theater Wing, and George C. White, president of the Eugene O'Neill Theater Wing, and esteemed director, both here and abroad. And now, let us turn it over to these distinguished young men, and they will continue the panel on the performers. George?
Thank you, Isabel. I'd like to start. We usually begin by saying, by talking about how you got into the business, and I want to get to that. But since we have Robert here, who is doing more than one role all at once.
Oh, sure, start with me.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Why not? Sure. I thought it would be sort of fun to get into craft first and then back into the whole reason of how you got here. And here is a person who is doing two roles in one.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about the craft of what's the mindset of the actor? I mean, for something so particularly diametrically opposed in terms of character, how do you approach those roles?
Well, I've been doing the parts for about 4 years now. So now for me, switching back and forth between the two is almost like flicking on and off a light switch. But I remember when I first started developing the two, it was very much of finding two different spectrums and creating two different characters. And I went very physical with both of them to make it very, to put it in my body as to finding the two characters physically, so then it became almost, what do you call it? It was just spontaneous, that it would be a bodily reflex to go into the two of them. So that's how I kind of started with it, and just creating two different people as much as I could, and slowly they began to flip back and forth a lot easier.
But you expended an astounding amount of physical energy. Were you born with that? I don't think anybody.
No.
I don't think anybody's ever poured more energy right on the whole. You know, the whole audience, the whole theater is rocking with your energy.
Well, I think I finally found something that fits me. I'm very much a pedal to the metal kind of a performer, and this is something that really needs it. And I'm allowed to really just let loose and do it. And it's almost like a release for me. I just really enjoy physical activity, and I'm very athletic, and I've had to be more so because of these parts. I've had to, work out constantly and make sure I eat well, and it's a constant maintenance system. I mean, daily, my days are pretty much organized to do the 2.5 hours at night, and maintaining myself for that.
And when you have some rest period, what do you do? Rollerblading?
Rest?
What's that?
Well, what is it? I think if I stop, I'll just die, so I just have to keep going.
Well, picking up on that a little bit, but you said something, and I think for people to know, and I know that there are a lot of people, including the great Olivier, was in the gym until he couldn't do it anymore every day. Yeah. So you'd say that physically, and I think all of you have got to keep some kind of regime that keeps you fit, because people, I think, forget that you don't just walk into the dressing room half hour before. And
oh, sure. And most people think that the show itself keeps you in shape, but in effect, you have to be in shape to do that. And it's very demanding, what all of us do, and it needs to be. You need to really keep yourself in shape to do that. You're an athlete. Really.
Olivier expected any actor to be able to jump off a 10-foot platform or try to jump up a 10-foot platform. It was gymnastics along with everything else.
That's why many people didn't like to work with him.
But also that's part of the relationship in theater of dance, the connection between the two. The actors and dancers alike face the same question of the discipline that they have to practice all their lives. It's a tremendous challenge that way. So much easier to be a playwright than to be an actor.
The sedentary life.
The sedentary life, yeah.
Although the same thing happens, I would imagine, for a playwright that stops writing. You become depressed or whatever, so,
It's like you have to keep
physically
the mind muscle
you have to keep
going.
the body moving, or I will start fading and becoming, apathetic about things.
Muscles you don't use, you lose.
Right.
Well, now I'll go back. How did you get started in the business?
Oh, I did plays in my garage when I was a little boy. I loved Bob Barker when I was a little kid. I don't know. And then I ended up in a town in Central California where there was a good program at my high school, which happened to be 3 blocks away from a theater, PCPA, which was a staple in the 70s. It might have been the biggest summer theater on the West Coast in those days. I was fortunate. Had that not been there, I don't know what would have happened, because I was hanging with a bunch of bad guys in high school and whatnot, but luckily the theater kept me on the straight and narrow. And then I ended up at ACT in San Francisco and came to New York from there. So that was the very beginning.
And you're very big. You're very tall. How tall are you?
6'2", and shrinking.
But is that a difficulty, to be too tall?
It hasn't been a problem No.
Because there were actors, very few actors who go over 6 feet. I don't know.
Right.
Because it's.
I don't know. In the musical theater, there seem to be a bunch of us. You know, for some reason, singing and being big. Where it's at these days.
Right.
Yeah.
Women are getting taller, so the men have to be.
I know, that's amazing.
I think in film it's a problem.
Yeah.
But I think on the stage, I prefer a tall man.
It's not that kind of show now. Let's
Okay. Speak for yourself.
Well, okay. Well, how did you get going?
Yes.
Oh my God. I can't remember a time when I wasn't on the stage. I think I did my first production at a Parks and Recreation at 7 years old.
Where was that?
In Los Angeles. And I remember standing on the stage at 7 in the spotlight, feeling like I was at home. And I think I did every high school, junior high school production. I just kept working and working and working. And I can't remember a time when I wasn't trying to do this.
And what about the question of discipline for you? Did you really learn that too?
I learned discipline early on. My parents, when I got home from school, my schedule was timed. I had violin, I played the violin, and I'd practice for 2 hours. I do my homework. I had concerts I had orchestra practice on Saturdays, concerts on Sundays. So I learned at an early age not to have discipline, that your life has to be structured. So it helps now because I'm in a piece that's very, very difficult to do, and I literally take care of myself. I have, my life is devoted to the theater at this point.
But you didn't feel that your parents were being like a stage mother kind of thing?
No, I loved what I was doing, but yeah, so I think I rebelled a little bit when I was about 19, but I rebelled into wanting to sing. I mean, I was a violinist up until that time, and then I said, I really want to sing. And that was my way of rebelling.
And you trained your voice at all up to that point?
I was in a preparatory program before I went to USC, University of Southern California. So, I was studying for a long time, still do.
How did you get to New York?
By air.
I thought it was train now.
I was in Los Angeles, and everyone kept saying, you need to go to New York. Because you're a singer and because you're theatrically trained. And I finally just picked up and went. I had no agent. I had no friends. Now, I won't recommend this for anyone. But I was determined. And I came here and I met people and I studied and I was excited about being in New York because this is it. This is where it happens. And within 6 months, I got my first job.
Marvelous.
Yeah.
How did you do that? You walked in? Did you get an agent?
It was really wild. I happened to walk into an audition with a director that I had worked with in Los Angeles. And he gave me the job, and I just kept working ever since.
The famous American sculptor of the 19th century, Augustus St. Gaudens, used to say, if you're not living in New York, you're camping out. So you had something about that.
Well, I knew, it's so true. I knew that when I was in Los Angeles, that the only way that I'd be taken seriously as an actor was to come to New York.
Right.
And I wanted to study in New York. And I think it's the best thing that I ever did because the opportunities, New York embraces talent as opposed to, and I hate to say that from Los Angeles, but they embrace talent. They nurture talent. If you've got something to offer, somebody in New York is going to find you, and you're going to work.
That's encouraging to hear. Pat, tell us about your...
I wanted to ask, how many of you have in mind being performers, actors, or the like? This is what I figured. How many of you intend to start on stage? That's where you get your first experience. That's super. Because here's what's happening today. You talking to somebody, 1st of March, I'll be a professional actor for 48 years. And I haven't done, I'm doing 1776, a revival of the musical that was done first in 69. I haven't done a musical before, and this is the first play I've done on Broadway in about 18 years. And the time, most of my career before that time was on Broadway. Then I went and did films and everything. There's a total different bunch of cats that are the younger people that are in films now. You see, most people my age and older started through stage. I mean, even Clark Gable and those guys, they started through stage, then went to film. Now, so many are going to sitcoms and television and the whole film thing. And the discipline among the actors that way is awful. For them to sit in their dressing rooms because of their own little egos and let people wait on them, you know, sometimes out in the cold, you know.
Go, Pat.
This cannot happen because you have it instilled to you on stage, because if you don't make your cue when you're supposed to on stage, your fellow actors will kill you before curtain call. You won't have to wait for the producer to fire you. You'll be a dead duck, you know. And so, when you get this kind of discipline ingrained in you, you cannot behave like some people I'm not going to name. Bad, awful behavior, and it should not be. See, it should not be, and it was not in the old days. You behaved that way with John Ford, Julia Kazan, somebody like that, and bam, you were on your way out of the. I don't give a damn if they had 3 weeks of you in the film. They would refilm it because you did not behave to the director, you know, the way a lot of them behave. And so, I'm saying to you, be good. When the assistant director comes and says, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, we need you on set, you know, you go. Don't say, I'll be there as soon as I finish my coffee. And now you stroll in 30 minutes later, and, you know, some director like a John Schlesinger has waited on you in the cold Mexico City air for you to get your little body out there, you know. Ooh, bad.
He's saying that along with voice and movement and singing, discipline should be learned as well. I think it's one of the most important things. That's a discipline on what you do and on everything that you work with. I think that J. Cameron Smith is a perfect example of that, because the discipline of being able to spew out the words you do at the rate that you do it is just fabulous.
Thank you.
It really is fantastic.
I was about to get to you,
What's your background to bring to that?
Well, it's interesting because I started off playing the violin too, and I was going to make the same observation. It's true. And
are you in 1776?
But that is excellent. And also, I was thinking about this on the way over today, that one of the things that has best prepared me for working in the theater is that when I was really young, I would play in chamber groups. And, I mean, first of all, the orchestra is fantastic, but chamber groups where you have to listen, and sometimes you don't play the melody. You're playing in second violin one day, and you have to listen for your turn, and you have to follow where the melody goes. It goes there, and then it comes back here. And not everybody has that chance to sing or play an instrument, but if you can develop other craft in different arts, I think it serves you so much to be able to learn to listen and follow where the focus of the story goes and where your fellow performers are, and you know that the melody shifts off and that you're just as much making the whole when it's your turn to play the harmony.
I think it's so important too, because an orchestra teaches you to not only listen to what you're playing, but what every other instrument is playing. You learn, and also to watch a conductor.
Right.
So you're watching and you're listening.
And the real joy comes from doing, following your part of it, not just when it's your turn to play the melody.
And it helps in doing ensemble work, because as you listen to fellow actors, you really have to listen for every single nuance and every single change. And I think learning an instrument or playing in orchestras or choirs or whatever it is that you want to do outside of being an actor, it teaches you things that will help you in your acting. I never thought that playing a violin was going to help me. I played the thing for 8 years, and by the time I said, oh God, enough of this. But what the skills that I learned as a violinist, not only just the discipline, but listening and watching and being aware, and the musicality and everything else has helped me as a singer and as an actor and a performer.
It's interesting that you both started with the violin, because I always was told that that was the worst sound in the world, children learning how to play a violin. Because until you play it well, you play it
exactly.
badly.
You sound wretched until you play really well.
But I think anything. I've heard, oh God, anything you play.
Trumpet's not too terrific
But string instruments are really difficult because you don't just press the ivory and that note comes out. You have to find it, and it's really
Where were you growing up playing the violin?
Greenville, South Carolina.
All right. Right.
Pat and I are both from the Carolinas.
Do you play the violin?
No, no.
Yeah.
I play guitar a little bit, but my discipline, I learned my discipline in choir in high school. I sang in a very prestigious choir in high school, and we had to show up at 7 o'clock in the morning and be there on time, or it was not good news if you were late. And what you were talking about, the listening that goes on, went on there too. It's really interesting to be a part of a group and to play your part, but also be conscious of what's going on around you. And it develops a sense in you that I didn't realize until you just mentioned it right now, how important how that served me in my career now, in being a part of a group and playing knowing when it's my turn and knowing when to step back.
Exactly, because unlike but unlike the actors who are trained on sound stages to only act when the camera's on them, you know, you have to, the actors on stage all create the illusion. You know, there's no editor going, look here, hear this, notice this. Everyone has to, it's an extreme, precise, you know, it's precision team effort. It really is.
I have worked at painting and whatnot and learned so much about acting through the discipline of all the other arts, you know, where I got frustrated with horrible scripts that you're handed, and so I tried to write something and learned a great deal by, you know, delving in there. I'm not a writer, but it helped my acting tremendously, along with painting, you know, thematically, how this counterpoints this and whatnot. It's all one. It's all related.
Well, yeah, going back, it's absolutely true. All the different disciplines interact if you're aware and pick up on it, you know, make that connection. Jeff, where was the choir in the high school?
We were in Cleveland, Ohio, Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Heights High Choir, and we toured.
Commercial, that's fine.
We cut albums, we toured. Wow. It was an awesome experience. It really was.
How big a choir? 30, 40?
Oh no, it was more like 50s, more like 75.
Very big job.
Very big. Wow. And then there was a chamber choir, and you know, I had a little solo every now and then.
Always a solo. Yeah.
Oh my God, this is very funny. One of my solos was.
I'll do one for us.
No. We used to play different community centers around the city, and we once went to a geriatric home, and the title of my solo was "Ain't Got Time to Die," which was very interesting. Ain't got time to die, and they're like,
Chastening, yeah. Then where did you go from there to come on and getting to?
Well, I went, you know, finished high school, and I thought when I went to college that I was going to be a disc jockey. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I really didn't know. I had a lot of exposure to the theater because being from Cleveland, my parents worked a lot in the community theater there in Caramel House, which is a very famous community theater. And I'd seen the first show I saw was an all-black production of Oklahoma. So, yeah, really. So I just thought that everybody in the theater was black, and it was just a natural place for me to be. But it never occurred to me as something to do until I went to college. I went to the freshman orientation little doodah.
What college?
Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. And my advisor happened to be the lighting teacher, professor in the School of Theater, and I told him what my interests were, and he suggested that I try the theater department. So I thought, well, you know, okay, fine, I'll do that. And then when I figured that, you know, you can get 8 hours of credit for voice work, or for fencing, and it was fun, and we had a good time, and all the people were so cool and groovy, and you know, I was smitten. I was bitten. It was just like, oh, there's no going back. This is where I'm supposed to be, and the rest is history.
When did you get to New York?
Got to New York in '76. got my equity card
19,
the first...
not 17.
Yes. I was so lucky.
Geriatric
I was so
card.
lucky. I got my equity card the first week I was here.
Oh, my God.
It is.
Yeah. I was,
How
yeah.
did you do that?
Picked it up, picked it up off a dead body.
Right. Chuck Cooper.
From the geriatric ward.
Well, I guess all the jobs I've gotten have been a combination of luck, who you know, and talent. And when I got to New York, upperclassmen who had been here before me had already cased the joint out and were working with this particular children's theater company, Performing Arts Repertory Theater, which is now Theater Works USA. And a friend of mine recommended me for an audition. I went in and sang, and they hired me. And I went out on the road with young Mark Twain, and did that for a while, and then did Freedom Train and a bunch of other children's theater. So I toured the country in this little van with 8 other actors, carrying our costumes and, you know, living the high diddly-dee life.
How about you?
Learning to cope.
When did you get your equity card and how?
Oh. Well, I came here in 1949. I came to the American Theater Wing. I was
I hoping you would say that.
Yes, well done.
I was a veteran of World War II, and came here on the GI Bill, and studied with Herbert Berghoff, and I didn't get my equity card. I actually got a SAG card and an AFTRA card before I got an equity card. A SAG card first, and then I guess is now you had to have to be offered a professional job or a job that required you joining one of these unions, and you had to have the money or a source to get the money to pay your initiation fee, which was sizable if you were unemployed at the time. See, if they would wait a while till you got some of your pay, but you had to join before you went to rehearsal. It was, but it was, I think, 52. I was in the first play that ever moved from off-Broadway to Broadway. It was called End is a Man. It had started as a project at Actors Studio, where I've been a member since 1952. And we went to what was then called the Theater de Lis on Christopher Street. I think it's now called the...
That's where I am, the
Is that where you are?
Hotel.
Well, End is a Man was about the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. All boys, I think. Ben Gazzara had the leading role. And a bad group of cats. But we were received so well by the main press in New York, and back in those days there were like, what, 14, 15 papers, daily papers in New York. And they came down. I think we were one of the first that they ever had gone off Broadway to review. So we got good reviews, and we came up to the what was in the Vanderbilt Theater on 48th Street, which is now a parking lot. And we may have been the last persons in that theater before it went into a parking lot. Wow. I don't like to think because of our performances, but yeah, that's how I started.
Well, you said you got the SAG card, Pat, first.
Yeah.
And in those days, I guess there was a lot in New York City of both film and television, and theater was all being done here.
All of television was live then, and was all here. I mean,
there was radio too.
Radio was here, right? Radio wasn't dead yet.
Doing straight plays on radio.
You know, a film actor couldn't work live television. The greatest training for live television was summer stock, where you rehearsed a week and then you put the butter on. You know? And then you'd be rehearsing another play in the daytime and performing that one at night. Yeah. And that's great training for live television, because our show would rehearse a week, then bam, on. And now you got all of this technical things, and you'll be doing a scene, and you're aware that this lady is supposed to come through this door, you know, and keep the story moving. They're having trouble with her zipper. And so you now, if you had a little experience, your head went, and you're going to say, she's never going to turn this way or that way, because she's not going to turn so that the camera is going to see that she has not zipped in the back here. It was exciting. and very good and screen people didn't want to do it because it scared the dickens out of them. But they don't really want to do stage. And they used to couldn't until you mic'd them. Now you mic everybody. Hell, we're mic'd in 1776, a little roundabout theater, 500 people. My gosh, I don't need to be mic'd, but they're mic everybody. But the stage thing, you see, and the reason they can get away with paying you so much less than they pay you films is that belongs to the actor. I forget about the director and the writer. They do it. But on the moment that this story is being told, that curtain goes up, and that bunch of crazy actors get out there, and they tell that story. And we get the peanut right away. We're the monkey that does the trick, and the audience has the peanut. It's very heady. And to play as we do in 1776, we are telling a story that there's a hunger for today. We're telling folks that politicians weren't always as sleazy as they are now. There was a time when they argued and they fought and all this sort of a thing, but they were honorable people. And there's a hunger now. And to be on stage with these 26 there's 27 of us in that play. Wow. And to tell this story when they know how the bloody thing ends. But we on stage don't know whether we're going to get the thing signed or not. And because we don't know, they forget that they know and they go along with us. And when finally John Adams says, "It's done," it's done. Generally, there's this round of applause, like, "Oh, good going, guy."
It's an amazing thing that Pat, in 48 years of acting, has never been able to form a strong opinion about anything.
Forgive me.
But, is it hard to work in a small theater with 27 people? How big is your stage?
Oh, no, gosh, it's a big stage, and we're on a turntable. No, it's a big stage, and the Roundabout is a wonderful theater. If you ever get a chance to play there, it's a wonderful theater. 500 people, and there's no bad seats in it. See, I mean, it's great. But it's, actually, it's quite roomy. It's really quite roomy.
And they do wonderful things there, too.
Well, Chuck, we're talking about large casts. How many are with you?
Oh my God, how many do we have? We're not for a musical. We're not that loud.
It seems big, though.
Yeah, it seems big because all the performances are big.
Later on, you can pay me for shooting.
Nice
setup.
I don't know. There's like 25, maybe 25, 30. Yeah.
And relating to, obviously, because I know that you relate well. How did that evolve?
Oh my God! 7 years ago,
Yeah, right.
Pam and I did a workshop down at West Beth Theater, and God, what a journey it's been. And as Bob knows, a lot of times, a lot of shows these days take that long to bring to realize them. But 7 years ago, we did a workshop down at West Beth Theater Company.
Did you have to audition?
Oh, yeah.
Are you kidding? Oh, yeah.
Even though you developed?
Oh, sure.
Yes, in fact, yes, they auditioned almost every black person in New York.
Yeah,
we
process.
auditioned for it.
Joe Layton was then on board as the director. Yeah, and
did you know when you first went in that you were in?
Yeah, I kind of got a feeling.
I did too.
Yeah. No, really. You know after a while you know when you're on the beam and when you're just out the door. You know when there's a light bulb that comes over their heads when they look at you and they go, oh yeah.
It's something. Once you've done this enough times, you can kind of get a sense when you leave the audition whether they liked you or they said thank you.
Yeah, or whether they were just
thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Usually it's my worst auditions that I get.
Really?
Yeah, you walk out and you think that was the worst. They hate me. They're all like shaking their heads like this. The next day you get a phone call. The ones that I do, it's like, yeah, nailed it. God, this one's mine. And I walk out and you never hear from them again.
So you didn't have that experience of the light bulb going on. You think, oh my God, I've blown it, right?
No, well, most of the time it happened like that. But with Jekyll and Hyde in particular, that happened to be one of those things that I felt, I know this role's mine. And I didn't even audition for it yet, and I said, this one's mine. So it was just my job to convince everybody else that it was mine.
Well, it took a long time again to nurture that long. Were you in on the beginning of
the show actually was conceived by Frank Wildhorn when he was in college in 1980 or something. And but the first production of it, workshop or whatever, was done in 1990. So it's been going for 7, 8 years. I got involved with it 4 years ago.
I even did a part in it.
That's right.
I played a Cockney. You never know what you're going to have to do.
Well, go back to the West Bath Theater. You began down there.
We did the workshop for 2 weeks. It was a short run.
It was 4 weeks.
Was it 4 weeks?
Yeah, 4 weeks.
Okay.
It seemed like 2 weeks.
Well,
My memory's fading.
I mean, you could not get your friends or your agents, and I remember that it was incredible. It was a small theater, and because Cy Coleman was doing it and Joe Layton, everybody wanted to see what their new musical was.
Right.
I mean, I had my agents, and people were so upset because they could not get in.
You couldn't get in. It was a hot
and
ticket.
it was. I mean, and all the stars came through, and everybody wanted to see what it was. But it's still with Cy Coleman, who has won numerous awards. It still took 7 years to bring this to Broadway.
Right.
Now, why is that?
I think for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think it was the subject matter. I think people were very afraid of it. If you don't know, it's about life on 42nd Street. I play a hooker, and it's about prostitutes and pimps and all that, and people couldn't see beyond that to see that it's really a story about life, and it's about relationships. And
I think it's mostly about relationships.
Yeah, it's about relationships.
Right.
But people were, and at that time, most of the musicals that were coming to Broadway were happy spectacles. You had a few like Les Mis, but they were big spectacles. And this was an intimate kind of a show about people. And everybody, Broadway, why don't you take it off Broadway? No one could really see it as a Broadway show.
Joe Layton's original vision was for it to be
an
off-Broadway show at what's that theater on 23rd Street, the Paramount? Not the I can't call the name of it now, but they were going to gut someplace out and do a whole environmental thing.
But it was the producers that said, no, it's a Broadway show. They clung to that idea. They never, 7 years, many projects that Cy has been involved with have come and gone. But this was one show that the producers really believed in, because it's probably some of the best music that Cy has written, as far as I'm concerned. And it also hits somewhere so deep inside. The people that I know that I talk to after the show come to me and say, thank you. You've touched me.
Yeah, especially the women.
Yeah,
it's
women.
It's very interesting.
It has become a woman's story, and it was written by men.
Yeah.
You figure that one out.
Yeah.
Jeff, we left you at ACT. How did you get from
At ACT, I was
you
off.
might explain what ACT is.
ACT is the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. And I finished the training program there, and then I was in the company 1 year, and they offered me another year. But at the end of the first year, we came and did the league auditions, the famous league auditions that used to happen. And we came and presented our scenes at Juilliard, and all the agents were there. And we had no idea. They didn't tell us because they wanted to keep us at ACT. We were cheap labor in those days. We had no idea that every New York agent would be there and would be courting us immediately thereafter. And sure enough, all of us in our particular class had several offers from different agents. Ellen Flack at Duva Flack found me and courted me and wrote to me and called me regularly and beckoned me and made me come to New York to
Isn't that unusual
audition.
for an agent to do that with an unknown?
I guess so.
Make what you like of it. Make what you like of it.
It's the first time I've heard of
me
that.
too.
Yeah. That was a wonderful thing. I guess they have an equivalent these days for the training programs. I don't know.
They do. There are the league
Yeah.
auditions.
Yeah. But I ended up here and shortly thereafter went off on a tour with the Alabama Shakespeare Festival and couldn't sit around and wait. Had been offered to cover Kevin Kline in Pirates of Penzance, and I thought, who is Kevin Kline? No thank you. And then I went and saw it in the park, and he fairly impressed me. So next time it came around, that job to cover, they offered it to me again, and I took it. And did that. That was my first.
Have you stayed with the same agent?
No. I should have. I might as well have just stayed with her because I've worked with a lot of good people and she's as good as any. But, you know, I was nervous and things didn't go well at one point or another and I switched and switched and, you know, I'll probably stay where I am now forever because they do a good job.
Let me pick up, Jay. We left off. You were playing the violin in South Carolina, and, you know, and I wanted to bring you to New York because I can see you down there playing scales on the violin that your siblings hated. But anyway, but go on, and then also about the development of the piece you're in now.
Okay. Well, as I said, I played the violin, and I was. My big sister was the one who was always in the plays in school, and she's ahead of me. You know, she was off in college by the time I hit adolescence, and so finally, someone dared me to audition for the school play because I was so shy. They thought it was a big joke, and they dared me. And it was The Diary of Anne Frank, and I got part of Anne, and my whole personality changed. You know, the glasses came off. I got contact lenses. My whole personality blew. And it was funny because I think creativity is like. Someone made this analogy one time. It's like, you know how cracks in the driveway, you know, weeds will find its way through. If you're, you know, you haven't found acting yet, you are creative by playing the violin, or you paint, or you write, and creativity will find its way, I think, you know. But when I found the thing I was really right for, everything fell into place, you know, things come to you, and doors open, you know. And then, what was your other question? Oh,
the development of the piece.
How the doors open.
Oh, well, and then I went away to college at Florida State in Tallahassee, but I dropped out, which is not something I particularly recommend. But what happened is I started getting acting work, and I kept thinking I would come back to school, and I just never did. I moved to New York, and I didn't have an agent. I didn't have a job. I don't know what I thought. I mean, you know, it's just ignorance is bliss. I had $200 and an unemployment claim. And, you know, someone I'd known in school who had a couch that I could stay with. And I bopped around and got offered, I had auditioned for the national tour of Crimes of the Heart. This was in '81 or so, I think. And I was doing a show out of town, and the person that represented me at the time called me and said, well, I have bad news and good news. Which do you want first? And I said, well, I don't want any bad news, but I guess the bad news first. And he said, well, they canceled the tour, Crimes of the Heart. And I said, my heart sank. And he said, well, the good news is that Maya Dillon has given notice. They want you to replace her on Broadway. I don't even remember the rest of the conversation. I just you know. So then, you know, I got an agent, and so it's kind of an unusual turn of events.
Is that how you got the agent?
Yeah, that's how I mean, once I was in that play, then people could come and see me in something. And it's a whole catch-22, because agents want to be able to see your work, but you kind of need an agent to get any work, so it's... but everybody, you know, everybody has a story like that, some kind of cockamamie story of how they first got a job. And I think tenacity is... you know, a really, really important thing. You just
and ignorance, too.
You're right.
Yeah, but also I think actors learn to accept rejection in auditions of that kind in a way very different from how writers feel. If a writer is rejected, that's the end of the world for him. But you have to expect that over and over
you get inured to
and
it.
be able to take it and go around. But now, what's interesting today is so many of these projects have taken years to develop. Now, what in your case, what happened?
Well, in my case, I'm in this play called As Bees and Honey Drown, which is a play by Douglas Carter Bean, and it's a project of the Drama Department, which is a theater company that I'm a member of, and it's the first original play we've done. And Doug wrote, not particularly with me in mind, but with, you know, having actors, some of whom are in the cast now, reading those parts as he wrote it. I mean, they first read the first act before there was a second act, and it got developed sort of through this company, which was a really particularly delightful way, I think, for him as well, to kind of be able to hear people in the roles. And actually, the girl that had been reading my part wasn't available, and they offered it to me, and I kind of, I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, I really felt I wasn't right for the part, but it was just so, it was such a difficult role, and I really believe that you should try hard things. I mean, that would be my piece of advice.
But describe the role.
Okay. I play this character with the unlikely name of Alexa Vier-de-Veer, who is a, I don't want to give it away, but she's this character who goes around and contacts young budding talents and takes them out to lunch and shows them around and introduces them to people, and it turns out she's not all she's supposed to be. And it's a very, very funny character, and I speak a mile a minute and carry on. And
With an exquisite British accent. And but totally unlike her appearance this morning.
No, that's
and
right.
that's part of the thrillingness that she's two different people. Talk about two roles.
That's right.
It really is
I have
two
sort of
roles.
the same thing in a way, because...
But of course, with the British accent, you are speaking 90 miles an hour.
I know, it's really... Sometimes I don't make those curves either.
She's a rascal. We're just not giving away too much. It's just great. She's not a scoundrel, she's a rascal.
But I was sort of intimidated by the role when I was offered it, and then I thought, no, you should say yes to things. When in doubt, don't not take something because it's difficult. I mean, would you turn Hamlet down because it was hard? You would want to play it. So.
Was the direction in telling you that you had to speak at that 100 words a minute clip, or was that something that was developed within the show itself?
That's an interesting question. I don't quite recall. I think it sort of developed in rehearsal, because she is literally and figuratively a fast talker. She says things, and the conversation's gone somewhere before the unsuspecting person knows where it's headed. So it's sort of. But I also think it is in the writing, because she has these long run-on sentences that segue. There are a lot of non sequiturs, and it's that kind of mind that sort of skips along.
It jumps from one thing to another and keeps on going.
And it's been a great success.
Yeah, it's going well.
Was it hard to memorize, dear?
It was hard to memorize, and we had a sort of a truncated rehearsal period because we did it under the showcase code. You could only rehearse a certain number of hours a day. And I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown learning this role. And the first few previews, it was great in a way because I couldn't really get nervous about performing. I couldn't really get self-conscious because I had to concentrate so much on just what I was saying, Does that make sense? I just tried to...
Well, particularly when there's no through line.
Yeah, non sequiturs.
Yeah, really
you have
hard.
to interrupt your own self with a new thought. It's like you have two tracks going in your mind all the time.
When all of you began, it's always a question to me, not knowing anything about this, how in the world you memorize. And some people, are you all good at it, or is it something that, again, is part of a discipline that you require?
I don't think of myself as being particularly good at it, but...
To me, I kind of feel it's the easiest part.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm
sorry.
Cry of anguish.
I don't know, most people, one of the biggest comments when you meet people that see a show, they say, how do you memorize all those lines? It's not as difficult. It's the least of my troubles. Walking is the big one.
It's becoming a trouble
within.
I saw Barrymore the other night, and I realized I was in therapy as he joked about going up, as he does frequently in that play. I was convulsing because I realized my brain cells are beginning to come out my ears or something. Words are starting to slip out.
Yeah, I've been getting there too. It's age.
Yeah, I know.
Well, how do you? Take by age, or do you work with somebody?
No, I just... At this point, soon I'm sure that's... coming my way is hiring someone to
run lines,
work, and all that. And in TV, you have to find somebody because it happens so quickly.
Pat, what do you do? How do you?
Well, I've always been able to memorize fairly easily. I'm 73 years old now, and
You've memorized that pretty good.
well, but it gets harder for me to memorize. I generally do it by myself. I also find, particularly on screen things, that if I write it down, particularly if I print it, which I have to do slowly because I'm not a fast printer, that helps me.
Wow.
I was in a play once called Festival. Simon Bella Spiewak wrote it. Paul Henry, dead now, was in it. Betty Field, dead now, was in it. But we were in Boston. And the Spiewaks were very prolific. They could write a new third act overnight and get a good night's sleep. Mr. Henry memorized his part, first line, second line, third line, and he said them in that. No matter what you said, he said it's there. And he stayed about 2 rewrites behind us. And it was hilarious third act for us. The audience didn't understand anything was happening. But I bring that up only as a way of saying that, of course, shows don't go out of town anymore. We used to have they didn't do previews. We went to New Haven, where you never got a good review from the Yale. They didn't like anything. Not Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, not Dark Top, nothing, not JV, nothing. They don't like nothing. go to Boston, and you start to get a guy named Elliot Norton in those days. He was a very good reviewer, and then to Philadelphia, and then in. And it was a kind of a joyful way, I think, to bring a play in, because you were away from home, and the cast and crew got to be more of a family than you do when you, instead of going to the hotel together, you know, each person goes their own separate way home when you're previewed here. But that wasn't what I was asked, was it? It gets harder to memorize. But I can still do it.
You know, there are things that keep coming up on the seminars, and they're kind of truisms. And one of the things on going out of town, not only is it so much better because you don't have people coming in every night and hearing, oh, they're in trouble, or I hear, or whatever. You might hear the same thing come through, but it's not as imminent as that. But also that you are completely away from all the problems of home, family, children, everything else. And you do work out together, and you do sit and listen to each other's thoughts on it. And that's come up over and over again of what a pity that that doesn't exist, and that it's become economically impossible. That's the answer to it. The other thing that's come up again today is when asked what was the most important people, or what should be the most important people in your lives, and it's been your parents, because they're going to have to support you while you're looking for a job, and friends, because there's a wonderful networking that goes on. And I think in the theater, more than any other place, they're not competitive at all. They couldn't get the job, but you go for it. And I hear the audition is being held wherever it might be, and so I said, cultivate your friends and cultivate your parents as well. They'll both be of enormous help to you. And it's come out here, too, with this friendship that you've talked about, a friend telling you where there was a job or where there was an audition and what you could do.
Did any of you have parents that didn't want you to go? What happened?
Yeah, Rob, I wanted to, because we haven't really gone into your background of coming in here. And
well, I went a totally different route than anybody else. I was a financier. I worked on Wall Street for a number of years. I went to school for finance, and E.F. Hutton, when it existed. And I acted, you know, just on the side, community theater and high school and a little bit in college.
Where was this? In
Long Island, Manhasset. And my parents kind of went along with it because it was, he's just having fun, and that was fine. And I was in school getting my finance degree, and I was doing a show my senior year, which was Godspell. And after the show, a number of people came up to me and said, you know, you're really good. Did you ever think of doing this as a career? And that's when the light bulb kind of went off, and I'd go home and I'd sit and watch TV, and you know, I'd say, you know, I'm surrounded by this all my life. You know, film and TV and stage and whatever. If I don't try it, I'll probably say, what if, all my life. So I started to get into it. I mean, I bought the trade papers, and I knew nobody in the business, and I mean, my parents never even had a record player. I don't know where my interest came from. I have no idea. And as far as dedication goes, I think that developed because of my, originally because of my need to succeed in something that my parents said no to. You know, so I became a real go-getter for it, and
was your father in Wall Street, or what was your father?
No, he was a civil engineer. They're both deceased now. So they didn't buy it at all.
But they lived long enough to be proud of you.
Well, they got to see a little bit of the glory, but most of the pain.
Yeah.
Which you know, they're seeing it from the best seats in the house now. But I'm glad they got to see a little bit.
Right.
But that was my route, and as Pat mentioned before, going out doing summer stock in 1 week, hoo-haws all around the country, that was my training ground. I never had any training as an actor, really. I lucked into, I could sing, so that got me roles, and I worked in the Light Opera of Manhattan, which doesn't exist any longer, but it was a rep company that did Gilbert and Sullivan and operettas and whatever, and we rehearsed during the day and performed a show at night, and rehearsed the next show while we were performing that one, and that was 52 weeks out of the year.
Oh,
so
boy.
that's how I learned. It was trial by fire, and the best way of learning is in front of the audience, I think, to see what really works and what doesn't.
Now, in talking about the learning process, I'm going to have to interrupt you, and we're going to take a break, and we're just going to stand up and stretch and come right back again. And in the meantime, I hope all of you will begin to think about the questions that you want to ask this extraordinary panel, and fish out how it is that they work in the theater. Some of them have made it sound very easy, really. No problem.
Oh, well, that was a mistake making it sound easy.
All you do is show up and get the job. So this is the part of this that is a stretch and good, but don't go away, please. Thank you.
This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Seminars on working in the theater, and we're continuing the seminar on the performance. And this group of performers that are gathered here today discussing what it is to work in the theater is really a most interesting and exciting one. So I'm going to let them continue how they got there and how they're going to remain there. That's the most important thing. Would you go on now?
I was talking when we first were standing over there, and I thought, boy, this is really interesting that they presume that we know something about working in the theater just because we have a job now.
We ought to talk about a little bit, Isabel brought it up, about networking, otherwise known as who you know. And I know that you know, there is very strongly a Northwestern mafia. There's a Yale Drama School mafia. I just learned today there's a Ohio University mafia, which I was not aware of, but that's good. So I don't know, Robert. You know, you're talking about it. You know, who you know.
Yeah. Well, I've always been, and probably will always continue to be, the worst at networking. I have a very awkward time of going up to people that I don't know because I'm supposed to know them. And introducing myself and all that, and all through my career I felt, well, look, as long as I just do my work and do it as best as I can, it'll all work out that way. And thank God, for the most part, that it has. So I haven't had to push through all that networking stuff, but it is so important to know people, and it's so important to make yourself open and accessible to meeting these people. And as I said before, it's very important. The who you know is very important, but it's the what you know that's going to keep you there. You've got to pay off once they say, okay, I'll hire you. You know, so that's how I feel about it.
You had to make such a big commitment over the years when this show was out of town. How many different places were you?
We did, this is the third production, technically, that I've done of it. I did it in a production in Houston and a mini tour from Houston to Seattle. And then we did a national tour where we hit like 29 cities in 30-something cities in like 29 weeks.
Did you find that what Pat said about being out of town, being, you know, perforce a family, was helpful in the evolution of the piece?
Yeah, because you feel almost like it's a freedom to take risks. The pressures of New York, it's got such a stigma to it. You know, to just do your stuff and to play and to make changes, and people are not going to be overly critical about it. And also you're away from your everyday life, so you can focus more on your work and just do that. And you've got this tight little family that you're with every single day.
Now, there was a possibility that you might not have come into New York. When was that decision made? Or had you always intended to come into New York?
Well, I personally always did, and everyone else always said, I mean, the producers said, yeah, we're coming in, but you always had that doubt.
Right.
And, of course, I always had that doubt that I was probably not going to be coming with it. You know, who knows? What kind of guarantees do you have?
Yeah.
I didn't have any contract saying, okay, you're our man if we come to Broadway. So it it was faith. It was blind faith. You know,
Now, are there other
it was a project
companies?
that we were doing, and I believed in. And whether it came in or not, I was still proud to do it and very happy to do it, and I got so much out of it. But this is just icing on the cake.
Now, are there other companies playing?
No, well, they just opened a Belgium production, and yeah, they're doing it in Dutch.
Wow.
That should be
Brush up
interesting.
your Dutch.
Yeah,
Yes.
but they'll do a national tour, I think, in '99, and then all hell will probably break loose.
Well, now,
Jeff, did you audition for?
Sideshow?
Yeah, and were you
no.
told?
Johnson Liff, the casting office, called and said, use this guy, he's what you're looking for, and they did. And we did a reading, a backers audition, virtually, one of the relatively early ones, and they told me afterwards, they said, this role is yours as long as this thing exists. And I thought, finally, it comes easily. They called me 2 months later and said, we're doing another backers audition, be here. And I said, I can't, I'm going to a writers' conference in Indiana. And they tried to rearrange it and all this, because David Geffen was coming and whatnot, and I couldn't come because I'd committed somewhere else. They got Chris Invar to do it, who I had just seen in Floyd Collins, who was a wonderful, amazing, intelligent, wonderful singer. And I came back from New Harmony, from the writers' conference, and I called them up, and sure enough, it was not just my role anymore. So I had to lobby, and I called my agents, and I don't know if any of that was effective, but ultimately they decided on me, and it was a scary time.
You know, nobody really thought it was possible to make The Life a hit. I mean, the people who first heard about how harsh it was, how tragic and harsh, and as they say, gritty nowadays, and then it became the hit it is. And who would believe that you could bring in that show? I would have thought, if I were reading, that there was going to be something about a Siamese twins. What is it? I wouldn't have been a backer of that, just, thinking, how can it be made to work? And then it does work. And then Ben Brantley gives it the biggest rave review I think I've ever seen him write. Every word of it, praise, and even the idea of it appealed to him very much.
Did you go out of town at all?
No. We workshopped it at the Richard Rogers Theater, in the very theater that it plays now.
Now, was that good? That must have been a help.
That was a great thing, and they saw it on a Broadway stage. The backers came and saw, now this thing works at a distance, and not just at 890 in a rehearsal studio.
That's a brand new approach, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's been done.
Well, that was the turning point for us. We did it on a stage.
Yeah.
Very similar to the one we're on now.
We never went out of town.
And they saw it on a stage, and all of a sudden they said, okay, I can see this is going to work.
What about off-Broadway? Do you workshop for off-Broadway productions? Do you rehearse and open cold? I've never followed you in that.
Well, as I said before, we were on this contract where we could only have X number of performances. I can't remember, 16, 15, something like that. But we did it off-Broadway and then moved it to an off-Broadway theater, so it was sort of similar. But Ben Brantley came and saw us in that first phase.
What rehearsal time off-Broadway?
How much rehearsal time? The average amount, it was 3.5 weeks or something. But we had short days because that contract protects the actors from, if you're not being paid, they can only use you so many hours a day.
What is the difference in your actors, in your pay, off-Broadway, but what kind of a contract?
Well, there's different ones. This one was really showcase code, which is you just do it for the experience and you're free to take another job. However, if you get offered one, they lose you overnight, So it's kind of like you have to sort of will yourself to stay put and be devoted to the project. But I think there's a whole tier of different
They're called LORT contracts, LORT A, B.
Depends on the seating.
76 is a
yes,
LORT
it's based on the number of seats in the house.
And it's also a favored nations kind of a thing, and if you haven't run into that, you'll run into it. And it means that nobody can get any better than you, and you can't get any better than anybody else. In other words, you're all in the same boat, money-wise.
It was a great device thought up by producers. And then sometimes they pay you and, food stamps and that sort of thing.
You're working.
You're working.
And everybody gets the same amount of food stamps.
Right. It is, but say before I did this, I was at the McCarthy Theater in Princeton, which is a very good theater if you ever get a chance to play there. And Emily Mann is a fine artistic director. But there, and it's, I think it's called a Lord D theater too, but because it is in Princeton, they can pay you less in Princeton than they have to pay you if you're on 45th and Broadway.
Don't you get per diem when you're out of town?
Well, now, what they do now, they used to do this thing, used to get rehearsal pay, a Broadway show no matter what. Right. And unless you were a single person living with your folks, you couldn't eat on rehearsal pay. And if you were in the show and it opened on Monday and closed on Wednesday, you didn't get, but you know, well, you got your 2 weeks guarantee or your full pay. But believe me, you would have been better off working at the post office as far as having money to put in your pocket. But nowadays, under the Lord contract, they have to, once you, the rehearsal pay and performance pay is the same money.
Yeah.
And like you guys will learn.
I let Picasso said, "I want to be so rich that I can afford to live like a poor man." You know, it's perfect for an actor.
Yeah.
Terrible way to make a living, wonderful way to live a life.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
And you say that the life never went out of town either, speaking of the
No,
life.
it was that was the scariest thing, I think. It was a fishbowl. We knew that was what it was going to be. But we invested 7 years. I was ready. I don't care what happens with this show. I'm ready.
And after 7 years, we were so glad to see it up there. We didn't care what anybody said.
Now, will they have other companies of that?
No. No,
Oh,
that was it.
planning.
Just the well, yes, they are. They're planning a London company. They're planning a Australian, Japanese. There's been a lot of interest in it.
So it's beginning to have a life that will go on for years and years.
Yeah.
It'll more than 7 years. So it's 7 lean years, 7 rich.
That's right.
We're going to go turn to questions now, and there are so many of them. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
We'll get to you.
Of course.
Hold it. That's all.
I've been
Our
holding.
first question.
My name is John Francis Fox. My question is for Pat Hingle. First, what was it about 1776 that compelled you to make your musical theater debut in that show? And can you also tell us how the GI Bill affected your career?
Okay. I liked the show when I saw it originally. And Howard Da Silva and I were buddies. And Benjamin Franklin is a wonderful role. Good Lord, if you ever get a chance to play it. I mean, it's just a wonderful role. So, having never done a musical and wondering, you know, if I would ever get a chance to do it, when this thing popped up, it came out of the blue because they originally had George Hearns, who was an accomplished and a renowned musical performer. But it came up, I came up in an audition, and I got the role. Now, the GI Bill enabled me to come to the theater wing and study, and it was something that World War II veterans got, that the government paid for you to go to college. And that's why there's so darn many college graduates of my generation, because we, you know, had this wonderful thing. You could use it for, to buy a home, or because they set so many $1,000s for each person, and you could either use it for school, home, or whatever. And so that I think that probably the GI Bill just made it easier. I would have come anyway to New York from the University of Texas, probably.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Tony Mansker. I'm a drama major at NYU, and I wanted to ask all the performers. I know you guys are performing your show almost 7-8 times a week. I know you said you've been with Jekyll Hyde for almost 4 years. Does the repetitive cycle of doing it almost daily become monotonous?
And I'd add to that, and how do you keep it fresh?
Well, go ahead, Tom.
I would say that the freshness comes because of the unique nature of the theater. Every night you go out there, it's a new animal and a new beast. There's a new group of people out there, which is an intrinsic character to the play. So the freshness comes from your desire to do the best job that you can do that night, from your exploring the part, being willing to be open to new choices every night, or within a certain parameter. I mean, you don't want to like do something totally ridiculous and throw everything off, throw everyone else off. But you have to be open to, well, maybe if I put that pause, we all would love to put pauses in. If I wait a little bit on that line and then lay it in there, it might hit, you know, and you try it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's where the freshness for me comes from.
Yeah, well, like you said, the audience is different every single night. So that fuels you. Also, I'm different every single day. So I bring to my performance that night who I am that day, what happened to me that day. And it may be minuscule, you know. To me it feels huge, but to somebody else it may be, you know, such a little thing. And also my fellow performers, they're all different every day. So some days the gears are just working so well because, yeah, I don't know, the moon is full, and then other days it's just it doesn't. And
what happens on those days that it doesn't? You've got an audience out there that doesn't care whether.
Well, you've got
it's not a good day for you.
You've got to trust that the story you're telling is still coming across, and try not to fight it so much, and go with it, but still maintain what you're trying to tell. I think
that's where technique comes in.
Do you have a
Exactly.
mechanism to get back to it?
Excuse me?
Do you have a mechanism that you know that you're off balance on this, or your gear is not meshing?
I try
how to get back to it. Do you,
well,
what
I try
do you call on?
I try to get it off of me. You know, get all the attention off of me and just put it on the people that I'm working with. Say, okay, stop trying to make it work. Work off of what you're getting. You know, and that keeps it. Whatever comes out is still going to be alive and fresh because it's what you're working with. So that's the way I do it.
Are you going to say something to Cameron? What were you going to add to that?
No, I mean, I think we probably all have had similar experiences. I was just thinking just then when you were saying that sometimes when things go wrong, and it might be that someone coughed on a punchline, or in the audience, you know, or a prop fell backstage, and it's sort of like when you're telling a joke in a restaurant and the waiter walks up, right when you're, you know, setting up the joke, you have to kind of regroup and figure out there's a part of your brain going, that you're telling a story, and if you really love the story you're telling and you're familiar with it, even if things get thrown and they're different, you trust that story. So you figure out, you sort of instinctively figure out, oh, they didn't understand this. I need to kind of underline this, set this part of the story up so that when so and so has the punchline, it will fire, and you kind of you develop that as you go along in your life and in a run of a show. You know.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Erica Umpenauer, and I'm also a drama student at NYU. And I was just wondering, for the whole panel, what was your most embarrassing moment on stage?
Anybody.
Which one?
I know.
The most.
Good
First
Lord.
play I was ever in high school, I came out on stage and tripped and fell down. I think I haven't topped that.
Oh, God.
For me, I was in a play, and we had the critics there, and I blanked out. I was in the middle of a song, lyrics, and usually I'm very good at making something up. I started mumbling. It was not pretty.
I was on stage with an actor who threw up.
I think you win.
We had heard that he was ill, and then we got it was the last scene of the play when everybody kind of comes out on stage. It was this play, Wild Honey. It was Sir Ian McKellen, and he was ill, but we'd made it all the way through the show, and right before it was rewritten by Michael Frayn to be sort of a farce. And right before the end of the show, I had a love scene with him. And I'm bashful, so I'm facing away from him, and I hear him getting sick, and I'm thinking, I'm going to bring the curtain down. And I'm thinking, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have to, I'm thinking, what do I say? And then he kind of regrouped and carried on. I'm not even sure if the audience knew that he was sick. And then apparently the ASM had told all the actors in the wings, okay, he's sick out there, and they all laughed because they thought it was a joke, and they all ran out and went, ah, and they all ran on stage and realized. So it was and I was kind of the only one who kind of quite knew what was going on. I was trying to help him out and keep the play rolling, and I don't think the audience really knew because his character was sort of ill too.
Wow, you win.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Craig Burns from NYU. This is for Jeff McCarthy. How was the writing of Sideshow developed?
Well, it's based on a true story. The Hilton sisters were, in fact, a vaudeville act in the 30s and early 40s, and so they started with with all of that. I wasn't there at the very beginning. I can speak for the character I play began as, I think, a fairly absolute bad guy, and I will attribute myself somewhat for lobbying and working to humanize him and make him somebody that you care about to some degree. Help me, somebody. No one else is in the show. It's that mainly in previews we've tightened and cut. It was a 3-hour and 15-minute musical, and I did Les Mis, and I've had enough of that. You know, the long, getting home at 1:30 in the morning or something. So that mainly in previews, that's what we did, was edit it and bring it down to just as clear a story as possible.
How long was it in previews?
Just a month. Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Since we didn't go out of town.
Lisa? Well, then, if there are no other questions, I have some
I
questions.
have one question. What about your name? Does that confuse people?
It sure does.
Yeah, now why did you choose to confuse
Oh,
people?
man, I didn't choose to confuse people exactly, but my name is, I go by my initial, J. And that was because my name is Jeannie, and I guess by the time I got my equity card, I felt that was like a little girl's name. Now I'd love it. I don't mind being called Jeannie at all. But so I started going by J, I guess, when I went away to college. And I was J. Smith, which was really like being called John Doe or something. And when I joined Equity, they wrote me a letter right before the playbill went to press and said, you can't be an initial Smith because there's so many people in Equity whose last name is Smith, whose names begin with J. So I temporarily took my grandmother, whom I'm named after, her maiden name was Cameron. So it was J. Cameron. And then I had made this sounds like a long story, but it's really not. I'd made this film when I was in college under the name J. Smith, and remarkably, it went to the New York Film Festival, which no one expected it to do. It's like a $5 movie. Victor Nunez, it was his first feature, Victor Nunez. And so they had already printed the film, but here I was getting ready to move to New York, and I wrote Victor Nunez a letter and said, gee, I've had to change my name to J. Cameron. I know that in the film I'm billed as J. Smith, and I had the title role, so I really wanted to somehow capitalize on it. And I said, is there any way you can think, at least in the press release or something, to help me out? And I got a poster in the mail right before I moved to New York, and my billing was J. Smith - Cameron. He just added Cameron on the end, and I just stuck with it.
There you are.
Right.
Sounds like an author. It
Victor
can be
Nunez,
anything.
yes.
The print ad that you had running, when I was living in California, I saw for some pharmaceutical thing, you had your name right on it.
Oh, I know. Well, I don't know why they did that. I guess for...
I love that, though.
I wanted to ask one question, too. Particularly where the show is located, your research is right out the back door.
Not anymore.
No, but did you actually?
Yeah, we did. I mean, because we knew nothing about that lifestyle, you know. And Joe, Leighton said, well, "You've got to get out there and you've got to go see. You've got to walk down there and see what they're doing."
He didn't say walk the streets.
Well, no, he didn't, but we did. We did it actually literally. About 4 girls. We went to the 44th and 11th. Not very bright. But we wanted to get a sense of what it was like. Oh, it was stupid. But I'm glad we did it, though, because we got a sense of where the pimps are, how the girls approach the cars, where the runners are, how many pimps are on the streets, the sense of danger that's always there. And it's fascinating. We probably could have been killed.
Did they mind you being there?
Oh, no, it was horrible because they thought we were going to take over the territory or try to get the girls off the street. They didn't know why we were there.
Did you talk to them actually one-on-one?
I did, but not at that time, yes. I did have a conversation with a couple of...
Can I do a quick roundup? Are you still working? Do you take any lessons? Do you take any courses? Do you do anything other than what you're doing? Let's start with you, Jeff.
I don't right now, but I will be taking some more singing brush-ups and whatnot, and I'm always working in the gym, as we were discussing earlier, to keep that palpable. Acting lessons I haven't done in a while, and don't have plans to do right now, but probably will at some point.
Do you prefer acting to writing?
Acting to writing? I don't prefer one to the other. I counterpoint them and get bored here and go over here.
You talked about being at a writer's conference.
Singing opposed to acting, all TV opposed to the theater. It's all you do one, you want the other, you know, and so hopefully you can do the other and keep yourself alive.
Bob?
Well, I coach whenever I have an audition or something like that. I always I always need that third eye. There's a lot that I do on my own, but I still like to have that kind of input. And vocally, I still train every week. I have been since the first day I started this career. I feel that, especially doing what I'm doing, it's very easy to throw my whole voice out of whack because I'm going really low to really high, and if I don't do it right, I'm going to hurt myself. So every week I just need a little tune, so to speak, you know, just to keep that intact.
Well, I don't sing and dance like my esteemed colleagues do, and I haven't taken an acting class in a long while, but, and this sounds corny, but what I find helps me the most is to read a lot. I find like when I read a lot, it really stimulates my imagination, and I find that the single most helpful thing. I mean, I do that for pleasure as well. I don't mean scripts, I mean anything, novels, newspapers.
Jeff?
I don't dance. Don't ask me. Really. I swim to try to stay in shape. I don't take any voice lessons or acting lessons, but I find that I have 3 children, and they are my school. They live so profoundly in the present, and I'm just so captivated by their lives and what they're going through, what they're experiencing, that I kind of relive it, and that process informs what I do on stage very often. And so that's a big part of my life and my regenerative process.
Pamela?
I take voice lessons every week. I train every week. I, like Bob, have a very difficult role, singing role. Rangy, and so I
it's
have
incredible.
I have to keep the instrument, my instrument, on top, and the only way to do that, I would train even if I wasn't starring on Broadway, because, you know, because it just makes you get better and better and better, so that when you do get the opportunity, and I mean, they threw this role at me, but if I hadn't been training, I couldn't do it. It is so unbelievably demanding. But then they wrote it around everything that I do, so God help any one of you that ever get this role. But I think, just train, girls, and I'll give you. But I believe that you have to stay on top of your craft. Yeah.
Pat?
Well, at 73,
we go to him for training.
I just have energy enough to do the show 8 times a week. Benjamin Franklin is on stage almost all the time, and to conscientiously contribute is all that I have. And if I hadn't had a high regard for this particular seminar, I would not have come, because I don't. I used to, you know, could do a major role on Broadway and go to ball games and all the wonderful things, play with the Broadway Show League and all that kind of stuff, but no more. And so I just, I go to the theater.
I want to say I'm so glad you have that high regard for the American Theater Wing and that you're doing this seminar for us, because it's invaluable to have you on it. And to have somebody that came from the American Theater Wing's GI Bill in the school, which was really what was started in order to give a background of what it is to work in the theater from every point of view, so that you would know what the workings are and what was expected of you. And our seminars that we do here are always too short, and I always find myself saying, I'm sorry that we have to stop the seminar now, but I have to say it again, and thank all of you for coming here, and thank you for coming. It's the American Theater Wing seminars that come to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, located in the heart of Times Square.
Okay.